If you open this video, it means you want to understand what manifestation is and what meditation is, what the real difference between them is and how they actually work in real life, not just in trending videos and empty promises. You need this knowledge so you can apply it correctly and get real results, not illusions or temporary motivation, because the truth is simple. Most people use these concepts wrong and then say they don't work, but in reality they never understood them in the first place. So here is what they truly mean and how they can change your life when used correctly. Meditation is the foundation. It is the ability to sit with yourself without distraction, without noise, without constantly reacting to every thought that appears in your mind. It is not about forcing yourself to think positively. It is not about escaping reality. It is about training your attention, your awareness, and your nervous system to become stable, calm and clear. When you meditate, you are not trying to get something. You are learning how your mind works. You observe thoughts without attaching to them. You notice emotions without letting them control you. Over time, this creates space between you and your reactions, and that space is where control begins. Scientific research in neuroscience and psychology has shown that consistent meditation reduces stress, lowers cortisol levels, improves focus, increases emotional regulation, and even changes brain structure in areas related to attention and self-awareness. This is why practices like mindfulness meditation are recommended by psychologists, therapists, and even doctors. Manifestation is different. Manifestation is about direction, intention, and action. It is the process of deciding what you want, seeing it clearly in your mind, emotionally connecting to it, and then aligning your behavior with that vision. It is not magic, and it is not about sitting and waiting for things to appear. It works because your brain starts filtering reality differently. When you are focused on a goal, your attention system, called the reticular activating system, begins to notice opportunities, patterns, and information related to that goal. Your decisions change, your actions become more consistent, and over time your external results start to reflect your internal focus. This is why people who use visualization techniques in sports, business, and performance often see better outcomes, because they mentally rehearse success before it happens. These practices are very popular and recommended by well-known figures in different fields. For example, Oprah Winfrey has openly spoken about meditation and visualization as part of her daily routine. Jim Carrey famously visualized his success years before achieving it, writing himself a check for $10 million and focusing on that vision. Athletes like Michael Phelps use visualization before competitions to mentally prepare every movement, and many high-performance coaches and psychologists integrate both meditation and visualization in training programs because they understand that a calm mind and a clear direction together create powerful results. So how do you actually practice this in a simple and effective way? First, meditation. You don't need anything complicated. Start with 5 to 10 minutes a day. Sit in a quiet place. Close your eyes. Focus on your breathing. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. When your mind starts wandering, and it will, don't fight it. Just notice it and gently bring your attention back to your breath. This simple act repeated daily builds mental discipline and clarity. Over time you will notice that you react less. You think more clearly and you feel more stable even in stressful situations. Now, manifestation. After meditation, when your mind is calm and clear, take a few minutes to define what you want, not in vague terms but specifically. What exactly do you want to change or achieve? See it in detail. Imagine the environment, the feeling, the result. Allow yourself to feel as if it is already real, not in a delusional way but as a way to emotionally connect to your goal. Then ask yourself what actions align with this vision. What can you do today, this week, this month, and start acting on it. Even small consistent actions matter more than perfect plans. The combination is where the real power is. Meditation removes mental noise and emotional chaos. Manifestation gives you direction and purpose. and action turns everything into reality. Without meditation, your mind is too scattered to focus. Without manifestation, you have no direction. And without action, nothing changes, no matter how much you think or feel. Who actually needs this? People who feel overwhelmed, people who overthink, people who lack focus, people who feel stuck or lost, people who want more control over their emotions and decisions, and also people who already have goals but struggle to stay consistent. This is not only for spiritual communities, this is used by entrepreneurs, athletes, creatives, and professionals who understand that internal state directly influences external results. What kind of results can you expect? With consistent meditation, you will feel calmer, more focused, less reactive, you will sleep better, you will make clearer decisions. With manifestation combined with action, you will notice increased motivation, better discipline, more opportunities appearing because your attention is trained to see them, and over time real changes in your life. Not overnight miracles but steady progress that actually lasts. It is recommended to start simple. Do not overcomplicate. Do not follow extreme promises. Start with 5 minutes of meditation, then 3 to 5 minutes of clear visualization, then take one small action immediately after. Repeat daily. Consistency is more important than intensity, and results come from repetition, not from one perfect session. The truth is, these tools are powerful but only when used correctly. Meditation is not escape, manifestation is not magic. Together they are a system of mental clarity, emotional control, and intentional action. And when you apply them with discipline, you begin to change not only what you achieve but how you experience your life, and that is where real transformation begins. And as you go deeper into these practices, something very important begins to change. Not just your results but the way you see yourself and the way you relate to everything around you. Because most people try to change their life from the outside. They push, they force, they chase results, but inside they are still anxious, distracted, unsure, and this creates constant resistance. Meditation removes the internal resistance while manifestation gives you a clear internal map of where you are going. One of the most powerful things you will start noticing is awareness. Before reacting, before making a decision, before falling into the same patterns, you will have a moment of pause, and that moment is everything, because in that space you can choose differently. Instead of reacting from fear, you can act from clarity. Instead of procrastinating, you can move forward even if it's uncomfortable. This is how real change begins. Not in big dramatic actions but in small consistent shifts in behavior. For example, imagine a person who constantly feels overwhelmed and cannot focus. They try to work, but their mind jumps from one thought to another. Stress builds up. They feel tired and unproductive. Now if this person starts meditating daily even for a few minutes, over time their nervous system calms down, their thoughts slow down, they gain the ability to stay present on one task. Then if they add manifestation, they define clearly what they want to achieve, let's say building a business or improving their income, they start visualizing themselves already operating at that level, making decisions, being disciplined, taking action, and because their mind is now more stable, they can actually follow through. This is how the combination works in reality. Another example, someone who struggles with confidence, they doubt themselves, they hesitate, they overthink every step. Meditation helps them detach from negative self-talk. They begin to see that thoughts are not facts, they are just patterns. Then through manifestation they create a new internal image of themselves, confident, decisive, capable. And by repeating this daily and taking small aligned actions, like speaking up more, making decisions faster, stepping into uncomfortable situations, their identity slowly shifts, and with it their external results. Many successful people don't call it manifestation but they use the same principles. They visualize outcomes, they set clear intentions, They focus their energy and then they execute consistently. The difference is they don't rely on feelings alone, they combine mindset with discipline. And that is exactly what you need to understand. Feeling good is not enough. Thinking positive is not enough. You must act. There is also a deeper layer to meditation that most people ignore. It helps you separate what you truly want from what you were conditioned to want, because sometimes what you think you want is actually influenced by other people, social media, pressure, expectations. When your mind becomes quiet, you start hearing your own direction more clearly. And this makes your manifestation much more powerful because now it is aligned with you, not with noise from the outside. Another important aspect is emotional control. Many people start something and stop because of emotions. They feel motivated one day and tired the next. They feel confident one moment and doubtful the next. Meditation stabilizes these fluctuations. You are no longer controlled by every emotional wave, and this consistency is what allows manifestation to actually turn into results. Because success is not built on perfect days, it is built on showing up even when you don't feel like it. If you want to apply this at a higher level, you can create a simple daily structure. Wake up and before touching your phone, take a few minutes to sit in silence, breathe and clear your mind. Then define one main intention for the day, not 10, just one. See it clearly, feel it, and then ask yourself what is the one action that moves you closer to it. During the day, return to awareness when you notice distraction. Bring yourself back. In the evening, reflect. What did you do? What worked? What didn't? And adjust. This is how you build a system instead of relying on random motivation. It is also important to understand that results are not always immediate, and this is where most people quit. They expect fast change, fast money, fast success, but real transformation takes time. What changes first is your internal state, then your behavior, and only after that your external reality. If you stay consistent long enough, the results become unavoidable. You don't need to believe in anything mystical to use these practices. You just need to understand how your mind works and how your actions create outcomes. Meditation trains your mind, manifestation directs it, and action executes it. When these three are aligned, you stop living on autopilot and you start creating your life intentionally. And the moment you truly understand this, you stop asking if it works and you start seeing how it works through your own experience. And that is the point where everything becomes real, not because someone told you, but because you applied it and saw the change yourself. And at this stage, something even deeper begins to happen. You stop depending on motivation and you start building discipline, because motivation is unstable. It comes and goes based on mood, energy, environment, but discipline is created through repetition, and repetition becomes easier when your mind is clear and your direction is defined. This is why meditation and manifestation together create a system, not just a feeling. Another shift you will notice is how you deal with obstacles. Before, you may have seen problems as signs to stop. Now you start seeing them as part of the process. Meditation helps you stay calm in difficult moments. You don't panic, you don't overreact, you observe, you think, and you respond with intention. Manifestation keeps you connected to your goal even when things are not going perfectly. It reminds you why you started. And this combination creates resilience, which is one of the most important traits for long-term success. Let's take another practical example. Imagine someone trying to improve their financial situation. They may start with excitement but quickly fall back into old habits, spending impulsively, avoiding important decisions, feeling stressed about money. Now, if they integrate meditation, they become more aware of their impulses. They notice the urge to spend before acting on it. They create a small pause, and in that pause they can choose differently. Then through manifestation they define a clear financial goal, not just more money but something specific, like saving a certain amount, building a business, or increasing income. They visualize themselves already managing money well, making smart decisions, feeling in control, and then they take aligned actions, budgeting, learning, creating opportunities, and over time their behavior changes, and their financial reality follows. This is how identity transformation works. You are not just changing what you do, you are changing who you are. And once your identity shifts, your actions naturally follow. Meditation helps you detach from the old identity, manifestation helps you build a new one, and action reinforces it daily. It is also important to understand the role of consistency over intensity. Many people start with too much, long meditations, complicated routines, unrealistic expectations, and then they quit. It is far more effective to do a small practice every day than a perfect practice once in a while. 5 minutes daily is more powerful than 1 hour once a week, because you are training your brain through repetition. And your brain learns through patterns, not through isolated effort. There is also a connection between these practices and your environment. If your environment is chaotic, distracting, negative, it becomes much harder to stay focused and consistent. So part of this process is also simplifying your surroundings, reducing distractions, creating small spaces of calm where you can think clearly and act intentionally. Even small changes like limiting phone use in the morning or creating a quiet corner for yourself can make a big difference. Another layer that becomes clear over time is the difference between thinking and knowing. At the beginning you are thinking about what you want, you are trying to believe it, you are trying to feel it, but as you repeat the process daily, it starts becoming natural. You no longer question every step, you simply know where you are going and you act accordingly. And this confidence is not based on ego, it is based on clarity and repetition. People often ask how long it takes to see results, and the honest answer is it depends on how consistently you apply it. Some changes you will feel almost immediately, like a calmer mind after meditation. Others take weeks or months, like building discipline or changing habits. And bigger external results take even longer, but they are much more stable because they are built on a strong internal foundation. It is also important to be honest with yourself during this process. Meditation will show you your patterns, your distractions, your fears, and manifestation will show you if your actions are aligned with your goals. If you say you want something but you are not acting towards it, the gap becomes visible. And this is not something negative, this is clarity, and clarity allows you to adjust. One more powerful practice you can add is reflection. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to review your actions, not to judge yourself but to understand, what did you do well, where did you lose focus, what can you improve tomorrow. This creates a feedback loop, and this loop accelerates your progress because you are constantly adjusting and improving instead of repeating the same mistakes unconsciously. Over time this becomes a lifestyle, not a technique. You don't separate meditation, manifestation, and action. They become part of how you think, how you decide, and how you move through life. You become more intentional, more focused, more aware, and this reflects in everything: your work, your relationships, your decisions. And this is the point most people never reach because they stop too early. They try for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and then they return to old habits. But if you stay consistent long enough, if you keep showing up even when it feels repetitive, something shifts permanently, your baseline changes, and once that happens, going back becomes difficult because you have experienced a different level of clarity and control. So the real question is not whether meditation or manifestation works. The real question is whether you are willing to apply them long enough to see the results, because the tools are simple, the principles are clear, but the results depend entirely on consistency and action. And if you commit to that process, step by step, day by day, you will start seeing changes not only in what you achieve, but in who you become. And that is the real outcome of these practices. And as you continue, one of the most important realizations appears. You stop looking for shortcuts and you start trusting the process, Because at the beginning many people are searching for a quick result, something instant, something that proves that it works. But the deeper truth is that real change is built slowly, layer by layer, and every small repetition is building something you cannot always see immediately, but it is there. Another powerful shift is how you start using your attention. Before this, your attention was scattered, pulled in different directions by notifications, emotions, random thoughts, other people's opinions. But now you begin to understand that attention is one of your most valuable resources. Where your attention goes, your energy follows, and where your energy goes, results begin to form. Meditation trains your ability to control attention. Manifestation gives your attention a target, and action turns that focus energy into something real. You also begin to notice how much of your life was on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts, the same reactions, the same decisions, and expecting different results. This is where most people stay stuck. But when you become aware of these patterns, you can interrupt them. Even something as simple as pausing before reacting, choosing a different response, or taking one small step forward instead of avoiding it, begins to break that cycle. And once a pattern is broken, a new one can be created. There is also a connection between these practices and confidence, but not the type of confidence that depends on external validation. This is internal confidence, the kind that comes from knowing that you can control your focus, that you can direct your actions, that you can stay consistent even when it is not easy. And this confidence grows every time you keep a promise to yourself. Every time you sit down to meditate even when you don't feel like it. Every time you take action towards your goal instead of delaying it. Another important aspect is patience. Because impatience is one of the biggest reasons people quit. They don't see fast results and they assume nothing is happening. But what is happening is internal restructuring. Your brain is creating new pathways. Your habits are slowly changing. Your reactions are becoming more controlled. And this process takes time. Just like building physical strength, you don't see results after one workout. But with consistent training, the change becomes visible and undeniable. You may also notice that your priorities begin to change. Things that once felt urgent or important may lose their intensity, and things that truly matter begin to stand out more clearly. This is a natural result of mental clarity. When noise is reduced, what is real becomes easier to see, and this allows you to invest your time and energy more wisely. At a more advanced level, you can start combining intention with specific planning. Instead of just visualizing a goal, you break it down into clear steps. You define timelines. You create structure. This transforms manifestation from a mental exercise into a strategic tool. You are no longer just imagining success. You are building a path towards it, and every action you take becomes part of that structure. It is also important to accept that not every day will feel perfect. Some days your mind will be restless. Some days your motivation will be low. Some days you will feel like nothing is working, and this is normal. The key is to continue anyway, because consistency is not about perfection. It is about showing up even when conditions are not ideal. And every time you do that, you strengthen discipline and resilience. Over time, your relationship with failure also changes. You no longer see it as something negative or final. You see it as feedback, as information that helps you adjust your direction. Meditation allows you to observe failure without emotional overload. Manifestation keeps your focus on the long-term vision, and action allows you to try again with more awareness. And this cycle continues until results appear. Another subtle but powerful change is how you experience time. When your mind is constantly distracted, time feels chaotic and fast. But when you are present and focused, time feels more structured, more intentional. You begin to use it instead of losing it. And this alone can significantly improve your productivity and the quality of your decisions. You also start becoming more selective with what you allow into your mind, the information you consume, the people you listen to, the environments you stay in, because you realize that all of these influence your thoughts and your direction. and protecting your mental space becomes part of your practice. Eventually this becomes your new normal. You don't need to force yourself to meditate. You don't need to remind yourself to visualize. You naturally return to these practices because you feel the difference. You think more clearly, you act more intentionally, you recover faster from stress, and you stay aligned with your goals. And this is where most people who commit to this process start seeing not only internal changes but external ones that are impossible to ignore. Better decisions lead to better opportunities. Consistent actions lead to measurable progress. And over time your life begins to reflect the work you have done internally. So if you reach this point, understand this clearly: there is no secret, no hidden formula, no shortcut. There is only awareness, intention, and action repeated consistently over time. Meditation builds awareness, manifestation builds intention, action builds results. And when you keep these three aligned long enough, change is no longer a possibility, it becomes a certainty. And at this point, everything becomes simpler, but also more real. You stop searching for new techniques, new methods, new secrets, and you begin to understand that mastery comes from depth, not from variety. It is not about doing more, it is about doing the same things better, with more awareness, more intention, and more consistency. You begin to notice how powerful repetition truly is. Every time you sit down to meditate, even for a few minutes, you are strengthening your ability to stay present. Every time you visualize your goal and connect to it emotionally, you are reinforcing direction. Every time you take action, no matter how small, you are proving to yourself that you are capable of change. These small moments accumulate, and over time they create momentum. Momentum is what most people are missing. They start, they stop, they restart, and they never build enough consistency to see real results. But once momentum is created, everything becomes easier. Actions require less effort, decisions become faster, and discipline feels more natural. This is not because things are easier, but because you are stronger, more focused, and more aligned. Another important realization is that clarity reduces anxiety. A scattered mind creates stress because it is constantly trying to process too many things at once. Meditation reduces this overload by bringing your focus back to the present moment. Manifestation organizes your thoughts by giving them a clear direction. And when your mind is both calm and focused, you experience a different level of stability. You also begin to trust yourself more. Not because everything is perfect, but because you see that you can handle challenges without losing control. You see that you can feel discomfort without escaping it. You see that you can continue even when motivation is low. This self-trust becomes one of the most valuable outcomes of this process, because it affects every area of your life. There is also a deeper connection between your internal state and your external environment. When your mind is reactive and unfocused, your actions tend to be inconsistent, and your results reflect that. But when your mind is stable and directed, your actions become more precise, and your environment begins to change accordingly. This is not coincidence, it is cause and effect. At this stage, it becomes important to refine your practice. Instead of just sitting and breathing, you begin to notice the quality of your attention. Are you present, or are you just waiting for the time to pass? Instead of just visualizing, you begin to ask more specific questions. What exactly do you want? Why does it matter? What are the next concrete steps? This level of detail makes your practice more effective. You may also start integrating these principles into your daily actions. For example, when you are working, you apply the same focus you train during meditation. When you are making decisions, you apply the same clarity you built during manifestation. When you face difficulties, you use the same awareness to stay calm and respond intentionally. This is where the practice becomes practical, not theoretical. Another key aspect is energy management. It is not only about time, it is about how you use your energy throughout the day. Meditation helps you conserve energy by reducing unnecessary mental noise. Manifestation helps you direct that energy towards something meaningful. And action allows you to invest it in ways that produce results. When your energy is managed well, your productivity and your well-being both improve. It is also important to remain flexible. Sometimes your goals will evolve. Sometimes your direction will change. This is normal. Manifestation is not about forcing one rigid outcome. It is about staying aligned with what truly matters to you as you grow. Meditation helps you stay aware of these changes, so you can adjust without losing balance. Over time, you develop a stronger sense of responsibility. You stop blaming circumstances, other people, or lack of luck. You begin to see how your thoughts, your focus, and your actions influence your reality. This does not mean everything is under your control, but it means you take ownership of what is. And that shift alone can completely change your results. You also become more patient with the process, but at the same time more serious about your actions. Patience does not mean waiting without doing anything. It means continuing to act while understanding that results take time. It means trusting the process while staying committed to the work. Eventually, you reach a point where you no longer question whether meditation or manifestation works. You have experienced the changes. You have seen the results. You understand how your internal state shapes your external outcomes. And from that point, you are no longer following a trend or trying something new. You are using tools that have become part of how you live. So if you are still here, understand this clearly. You do not need more information. You need application. Start small. Stay consistent. Be honest with yourself. Adjust when necessary. Continue even when it feels repetitive. Because real change is not created in moments of inspiration, it is created in moments of discipline. Meditation builds awareness. Manifestation builds direction. Action builds results. Keep them aligned, and over time, you will not only change what you achieve, you will change who you are. And as you continue applying this in a real, consistent way, you begin to notice something even more important than results. You begin to feel in control of your life. Not in a perfect, unrealistic way, but in a grounded, stable way. You are no longer reacting to everything around you. You are choosing how to think, how to respond, and how to act. This is where most people start seeing the real difference between information and transformation. Information is knowing what meditation and manifestation are. Transformation is becoming the person who actually uses them daily. And that difference is everything. You may also begin to notice that your tolerance for chaos decreases. Things that once felt normal, constant distraction, negative conversations, impulsive decisions, now feel heavy and unnecessary. This is not because you are becoming distant from life, but because you are becoming more aware of what affects your mind and your energy. At this stage, your decisions become more intentional. Instead of reacting emotionally, you pause. You observe. You think. And then you act. This small sequence changes everything. It protects your energy, it improves your results, and it builds a stronger connection with yourself. Another important shift is how you handle uncertainty. Life will never be completely predictable. There will always be unknowns, changes, unexpected situations. But when your mind is trained through meditation, you don't collapse under uncertainty. You stay present. And when your direction is clear through manifestation, you don't get lost. You adjust and keep moving forward. This combination creates stability in unstable environments. And that is a powerful advantage, because most people lose focus when things are not going as planned. You also start understanding the difference between being busy and being effective. Before, you may have done many things without clear results. Now, your actions are more focused. You do fewer things, but with more intention. And because of that, your results improve. It is also important to recognize that growth is not linear. There will be periods where everything feels clear and productive, and periods where progress feels slow. This is normal. What matters is that you continue. Because every time you return to your practice, you reinforce it. At a deeper level, meditation begins to show you your patterns in a very honest way. Your habits, your distractions, your fears, your excuses. And this can be uncomfortable. But it is necessary. Because you cannot change what you do not see. Awareness always comes before change. Manifestation, on the other hand, begins to challenge you in a different way. It asks you to define what you truly want. Not what sounds good, not what others expect, but what actually matters to you. And once that becomes clear, it becomes much harder to ignore it. Because now you know. This is where responsibility becomes real. You know what you want. You know what you need to do. And now it is about whether you choose to act or not. You may also start noticing that your confidence is no longer based on results alone. It is based on your ability to show up consistently. Even if results are not immediate, you trust the process because you are part of it. You are not waiting for change, you are creating it. Another powerful aspect is how you begin to recover faster from setbacks. Before, a mistake or a failure could stop you for days or weeks. Now, you process it faster. You understand it. You adjust. And you continue. This ability to recover quickly is one of the strongest indicators of real progress. Over time, your identity stabilizes. You are no longer constantly shifting based on mood or circumstances. You know who you are becoming, and your actions reflect that. This creates a sense of direction that does not depend on external validation. And this is where everything connects. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become more stable. Your actions become more consistent. Your results begin to reflect that alignment. So if you have followed this entire context, understand one final thing. This is not about perfection. It is about progression. It is not about doing everything right. It is about doing something consistently. Meditation is where you return to yourself. Manifestation is where you define your direction. Action is where you prove it in reality. Repeat this process daily. Adjust when needed. Stay consistent. And over time, you will not only see changes in your results, you will experience a different level of clarity, control, and confidence in your life. And that is the real purpose behind all of this. And if you continue beyond this point, something even more subtle begins to happen. You stop chasing change, and you start becoming it. Your focus shifts from What can I get? To who am I becoming through this process? And that question changes everything, because results become a consequence, not the main goal. You begin to understand that your internal state is the starting point of everything. If your mind is chaotic, your actions will be chaotic. If your mind is clear, your actions become precise. Meditation strengthens that clarity every single day, even when you don't notice it immediately. It is like training a muscle that does not show instantly, but becomes stronger with repetition. At the same time, manifestation begins to evolve. It is no longer just about imagining a future result. It becomes about aligning your current identity with that future. You ask yourself, if I was already that person, how would I think? How would I act? What would I stop doing? And then you begin to live those answers, step by step. This is where many people misunderstand the process. They wait to feel ready before they act. But in reality, action creates readiness. The more you act, the more confident you become. The more consistent you are, the more natural it feels. Meditation helps you stay grounded during this transition, and manifestation keeps your direction clear. Another important layer is the ability to let go. Not everything will go exactly as you planned. Not every outcome will match your expectations. And that is where meditation plays a crucial role again. It teaches you how to release control over things you cannot influence, while staying focused on what you can. This balance reduces frustration and keeps your energy stable. You also begin to notice the difference between force and flow. Force is when you push yourself aggressively, without awareness, without balance, often leading to burnout. Flow is when your actions are aligned with your direction and your internal state, where effort is still required, but it feels more natural and sustainable. Meditation creates the conditions for flow. Manifestation gives that flow a direction. At a practical level, your daily life starts to reflect these changes in simple but powerful ways. You wake up with more clarity. You start your day with intention instead of distraction. You prioritize what matters instead of reacting to everything. You make decisions faster, because your direction is clear. You finish what you start, because your mind is more stable. You may also begin to notice changes in your relationships. When you are more aware and less reactive, communication improves. You listen more. You respond instead of reacting. You become less influenced by negativity and more focused on what aligns with your values. This creates healthier interactions and stronger boundaries. Another key realization is that energy follows consistency, not intensity. You don't need extreme effort. You need steady effort. Small actions repeated daily create results that occasional big efforts cannot match. This applies to meditation, manifestation, and every action you take. There will still be moments of doubt. This is normal. But now you handle them differently. You observe them instead of believing them immediately. You return to your practice. You reconnect with your intention. And you continue. This ability to continue despite doubt is what separates temporary change from lasting transformation. Over time, your standards begin to rise. You no longer accept distractions easily. You no longer tolerate habits that pull you away from your direction. Not because you are forcing yourself, but because you understand the cost. You see clearly how certain behaviors affect your focus, your energy, and your results. And this clarity creates discipline that feels natural, not forced. Eventually, You reach a point where your actions are no longer dependent on how you feel in the moment. You act based on your intention, not on your mood. And this is one of the strongest forms of self-control you can develop. At this level, meditation is no longer just a practice, it is a skill you carry into every moment. You can bring yourself back to focus at any time. You can calm your mind even in stressful situations. You can observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. Manifestation is no longer just visualization, it becomes decision-making. You choose your direction clearly and you act in alignment with it consistently. And action becomes your language. Not just planning, not just thinking, but doing. Every day, step by step. So if you have come this far, understand this clearly. There is nothing complicated here. The process is simple, but not easy. It requires consistency, honesty, and patience. Meditation gives you awareness. Manifestation gives you intention. Action gives you results. Repeat. Adjust. Continue. And over time, you will realize that you are no longer trying to change your life. You already are. And when you stay with this long enough, the final shift begins to take shape. You stop asking, is this working? And you start asking, am I consistent? Because at this level, you already understand that the process works. The only variable left is you. You begin to see clearly that results are not random. They are a reflection of repeated thoughts, repeated actions, and repeated decisions. What you do daily matters more than what you do occasionally. This is where most people fail, not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't stay with it long enough. Another important realization is that simplicity wins. You don't need complicated routines, long rituals, or perfect conditions. You need a few clear practices done consistently. Sit. Breathe. Focus. Define your direction. Take action. Repeat. The more you simplify, the more you can sustain. At this stage, you also begin to detach from comparison. You stop looking at what others are doing, how fast they are progressing, what results they have. Because your focus is no longer external. It is internal and directional. You measure your progress by your own consistency, your own clarity, your own actions. This creates a different type of confidence. Not loud, not performative, but stable and quiet. You know what you are doing. You know why you are doing it. And you continue, regardless of external noise. You may also notice that your tolerance for distractions becomes very low. Not because you are forcing yourself to avoid them, but because you see clearly how they affect your focus and your direction. You begin to protect your attention the same way you protect your time. Attention becomes intentional. Time becomes structured. Energy becomes directed. And this combination creates progress that is steady and real. Another layer that develops is self-respect. Every time you follow through on your intention, you build trust with yourself. Every time you keep your word, even in small things, you strengthen that trust. And over time, this becomes one of the strongest internal foundations you can have. Because when you trust yourself, decisions become easier. Actions become faster. Doubt loses its power. You also start recognizing that discomfort is part of growth. You stop avoiding it. You stop seeing it as a signal to quit. Instead, you understand that discomfort often appears exactly where growth is happening. Meditation helps you stay present in that discomfort. Manifestation reminds you why you are there. And action moves you through it. This is how progress continues, even when it is not easy. At this point, your practice becomes integrated into your identity. You are not someone who tries meditation or tries manifestation. You are someone who uses awareness, intention, and action as part of daily life. And that changes everything. Because identity drives behavior. And behavior creates results. So the more you reinforce this identity, the more natural your actions become. You don't need to force discipline, because it is part of who you are. You don't need to search for motivation, because your direction is clear. Everything becomes more aligned. And this is where the process completes itself in a practical way. Meditation is no longer just sitting in silence. It is awareness in every moment. Manifestation is no longer just visualization. It is clarity in every decision. Action is no longer something you push yourself to do. It is how you move forward naturally. And when these three are fully connected, your life stops being reactive and starts becoming intentional. So if you are still listening, take this with you. Do not overthink it. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not expect instant results. Start where you are. Use what you have. Stay consistent. Because everything you are looking for is built through repetition, not through intensity. Meditation builds awareness. Manifestation builds direction. Action builds results. And if you keep going, day by day, without stopping, there will come a moment where you look back and realize that you are no longer the same person who started this process. Not because something magical happened, but because you showed up, and you continued. Integration means you are no longer separating your practice from your life. You are not meditating only in silence and then losing yourself in chaos during the day. You are not visualizing your goals and then acting in the opposite direction. Everything becomes one system. You think with awareness. You choose with intention. You act with discipline. And when that happens, your life stops feeling random. You begin to notice that even small moments matter. How you start your morning. How you respond to stress. How you speak to yourself when things don't go as planned. Because these moments are not separate, they are shaping your direction. Another deep shift is that you stop relying on external validation. You don't need constant approval, motivation, or reassurance. You know what you are doing. You know why you are doing it. And that creates independence. Not isolation, but independence in your thinking, your decisions, and your actions. You also start to understand that clarity must be maintained, not achieved once. This is not a one-time realization. This is a daily reset. Every day your mind collects noise. Every day distractions try to pull your attention away. Every day emotions fluctuate. That's why you return to the practice. Not because you are lost, but because you are maintaining direction. This is what strong, focused people do. They don't wait to feel lost to reset. They reset daily so they don't get lost. Another important truth is this. You will never eliminate all distractions. You will never feel perfect every day. You will never have complete control over everything around you. But you can control how you show up. And that is enough. Because how you show up, consistently, determines everything. You also begin to see time differently. You stop rushing. You stop trying to compress everything into quick results. You start thinking long-term. And this changes your decisions. You stop choosing what feels good now and start choosing what builds something real over time. This is maturity in action. Another layer that becomes very clear is this. You don't need more information. You need repetition. You already know enough. Sit. Breathe. Focus. Define. Act. Repeat. The simplicity of this is what makes it powerful. Not because it is easy, but because it is sustainable. And sustainability is what creates transformation. There will be days when it feels automatic. There will be days when it feels heavy. There will be days when you question everything. Continue anyway. Because the people who reach real results are not the ones who never doubt. They are the ones who don't stop. And over time, something becomes undeniable. You think differently. You react differently. You decide differently. You live differently. Not in a dramatic way, but in a stable, controlled, intentional way. And that stability is what creates real freedom. Not freedom from problems, but freedom in how you handle them. So if you've reached the end of this, take this as your starting point. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Now. Even if it's just 1 minute of awareness. Even if it's just one clear intention. Even if it's just one small action. Start. Because everything you've just understood means nothing without application. Meditation gives you control. Manifestation gives you direction. Action gives you results. And consistency turns all of it into reality. This is not theory anymore. This is your move. And if you keep going even beyond this point, something very quiet but very powerful settles inside you. Certainty. Not loud confidence, not forced positivity, but a calm certainty that comes from repetition, from showing up, from seeing your own patterns change over time. You no longer need to convince yourself that this works, because you've experienced it enough times to trust it. At this stage, you stop looking for external proof. You become your own proof. You remember how your mind used to react, how easily you were distracted, how often you delayed things, how inconsistent your actions were, and now you see the difference. Not perfect, but different. More controlled. More intentional. And that difference continues to grow. Another important realization appears here. You start valuing depth over speed. You understand that fast results are often unstable. They disappear as quickly as they come. But slow, consistent progress builds something that stays. Something that doesn't collapse under pressure. So you stop rushing. You allow the process to build. And because of that, what you create becomes stronger. You also begin to recognize when you are sleeping. When your focus starts to break, when distractions increase, when your actions lose direction. But instead of ignoring it or judging yourself, you simply return. You sit again. You breathe again. You define again. You act again. This ability to return without resistance is one of the strongest skills you can develop. Because no one stays perfect. But those who continue always progress. At this level, you also become more precise with your actions. You don't just act, you act with intention. You choose what matters. You eliminate what doesn't. You reduce noise. You increase focus. And this precision saves time, energy, and effort. You may also notice that your emotional reactions become shorter. You still feel things, but you don't stay stuck in them. You recover faster. You move forward faster. This creates momentum that is stable, not chaotic. Another deep shift is how you relate to yourself. You stop being your biggest obstacle. You stop constantly doubting, delaying, avoiding. Instead, you become someone who supports your own direction. You become reliable to yourself. And this changes everything. Because when you are reliable, you trust your decisions. When you trust your decisions, you act faster. When you act faster, you create results faster. Everything connects. You also begin to understand that clarity must be protected. It is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It requires maintenance. That is why you continue your practice. Not because you are trying to fix yourself, but because you are maintaining your standard. And this is a completely different mindset. You are no longer trying to become someone else. You are reinforcing who you decided to be. At this point, discipline feels lighter. Not easy, but lighter. Because you are no longer fighting yourself every day. You are aligned. Your thoughts support your direction. Your actions support your goals. Your habits support your identity. And when alignment is present, progress becomes natural. You also start seeing results in places you didn't expect. Better focus in your work. Clearer communication in your relationships. More control over your time. More awareness of your choices. These are not random improvements. They are the result of consistent internal work. And this is where most people finally understand. It was never about meditation alone. It was never about manifestation alone. It was about how you use them together, consistently, with action. So now, if you look at everything you've heard, everything you've understood, everything you've followed, there is only one thing left. Continue. Not perfectly. Not intensely, but consistently. Because consistency is what turns simple practices into real transformation. Meditation builds awareness. Manifestation builds direction. Action builds results. And repetition builds a new life. You don't need to start over. You just need to keep going. And if you keep going from here, you reach a point where effort starts to feel different. Not easier, but cleaner. There is less internal conflict, less hesitation, less noise. You are not wasting energy fighting yourself. You are using that energy to move forward. This is where focus becomes your default state, not something you force only when you remember. You sit down to work, and you work. You decide something, and you act. You don't negotiate with yourself as much as before. That internal resistance becomes weaker, because you've trained your mind to follow direction instead of distraction. Another powerful shift is that you begin to close the gap between intention and action. Before, you may have had many ideas, many plans, many goals, but little execution. Now, when you decide something, you move on it faster. Not perfectly, but immediately. And this speed of action compounds over time. You also start noticing how much power there is in small decisions. What you do in the first hour of your day. What you choose when you feel tired. What you do when no one is watching. These moments build your identity more than big actions done occasionally. At this level, you understand that discipline is not about pushing harder. It is about removing friction. You simplify your environment. You reduce distractions. You make the right actions easier to take and the wrong ones harder to access. This is intelligent discipline, not forced discipline. Meditation helps you see where friction exists. Manifestation helps you decide what needs to change. Action is where you remove it. You also begin to trust the process even when results are not visible. Because now you understand something most people ignore: results are delayed. There is always a gap between effort and outcome. And those who cannot tolerate that gap, quit. But you don't. You continue. Because you know that repetition is building something under the surface. Another important layer is emotional neutrality. You are no longer dependent on feeling good to take action. You act even when you feel neutral, even when you feel slightly off, even when motivation is low. This creates a level of consistency that most people never reach. And that consistency creates stability. You also become more selective with your commitments. You don't say yes to everything. You don't chase every opportunity. You focus on what aligns with your direction. This protects your time and your energy. At the same time, you become more present in what you are doing. When you work, you work. When you rest, you rest. When you think clearly. This separation improves the quality of everything. Another shift is how you define success. It is no longer only about external results. It is about alignment. Did you act according to your intention? Did you stay focused? Did you follow through? These questions become more important than quick outcomes. And ironically, this is what leads to better outcomes. Because you are building a system that works long-term. You may also notice that your patience becomes stronger, but not passive. It is active patience. You are working, moving, adjusting, while understanding that results take time. This balance keeps you stable. At this point, you are no longer trying to fix yourself. You are building yourself. You are not reacting to problems. You are creating structure. You are not waiting for change. You are producing it. And this is where your life begins to feel different, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer lost inside it. You know what to do. You know how to return when you lose focus. You know how to continue when it feels repetitive. And that knowledge, built through experience, is stronger than any external advice. So now, everything comes back to the simplest form again. Sit. Breathe. Clear your mind. Define. Focus. Choose direction. Act. Repeat. Continue. There is nothing more to add. Only more to do. And if you stay with this, without stopping, without overcomplicating, without waiting for the perfect moment, you will look back and realize that the biggest change was not what you achieved, but how you became the person who achieves it. You begin to understand that nothing you've learned here is separate from real life. This is not something you use only when you remember. This becomes how you think, how you decide, how you move. At this point, awareness becomes automatic. You catch yourself faster. You notice when your focus drifts. You see when your actions don't match your intentions. And instead of ignoring it, you adjust immediately. That speed of correction is what creates precision. You don't need to be perfect. You need to return faster. That's it. Another important shift is that you stop overvaluing motivation and start valuing standards. Motivation changes every day. Standards stay. When you have a standard, you don't ask yourself, do I feel like it? You ask, is this who I am now? And when your identity becomes clear, decisions become simple. You also begin to move differently through challenges. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, how do I respond to this? That shift alone puts you back in control. Meditation gives you the space to respond. Manifestation reminds you where you're going. Action moves you forward, no matter what. Another layer that becomes very clear is honesty. You stop lying to yourself. If you didn't act, you see it. If you got distracted, you admit it. If you avoided something important, you recognize it. Not to judge yourself, but to correct it. Because real progress requires real awareness. You also become more efficient with your energy. You stop investing time in things that don't move you forward. You stop overthinking things that don't matter. You simplify your focus. And simplicity creates power. At this level, you don't need constant reminders. You don't need constant motivation. You don't need to keep searching. You already know what works. Now it's about doing it. Daily. Quietly. Consistently. You also begin to understand something very important. There is no final point where everything is done. This is not a destination. This is a way of living. You will continue to grow. You will set new directions. You will face new challenges. But now you have a system. No matter what happens, you can return. You can sit. You can clear your mind. You can define your direction. You can act again. And that means you are never truly lost. That is the real power behind all of this. Not perfection. Not control over everything. But the ability to return and continue. So if you take one final thing from all of this, let it be this. Do not wait. Do not overthink. Do not search for more. Use what you already understand. Meditation builds awareness. Manifestation builds direction. Action builds results. And consistency turns it into your reality. Now it's simple. You either apply it or you don't. And everything that follows will come from that choice.